This video presents a brief overview of topics in Week 2 of EBSP 506 Restoration Ecology. Be sure to complete all assigned readings, complete the forum assignment this week, and submit the assigned essay. A major question in restoration is why should an area be restored? In general, restoration is done in response to two major types of disturbance. First, restoration occurs in response to natural disturbances such as storms, fires, etc. Second, restoration occurs in response to human-caused or anthropogenic disturbances. In order to understand the promises of restoration, we need to examine the causes of degradation. Kluhl and Arison, 2013, differentiate between degradation, damage, and destruction. They describe degradation as a prolonged but not severe disturbance. Degradation may be from one sustained low-grade disturbance, such as overgrazing natural rangeland, or a series of minor impacts occurring at a frequent enough duration to not allow full recovery between impact events. In contrast, Kluhl and Arison use the term damage for significant disturbance or impairment, occurring as a one-time event. Damage may result in an altered state for the impacted ecological system. Both degradation and damage may refer to anthropogenic or natural stress on a system. The final term, destruction, Kluhl and Arison, 2013, page 39, describe as, quote, the ultimate expression of disturbance recognized in the SER primer. Their example is a terrestrial forest. Timber harvesting of individual trees faster than they can be replaced is an example of degradation. A clear-cut harvest is an example of damage. A landslide resulting in complete forest removal is an example of destruction. The Global Restoration Network, GRN, no date, categorizes degradation classes according to how the land is used. The 6 human activities that require biologically productive space identified by GRN include 1. Growing crops for food, animal feed, fiber, oil, and rubber. 2. Grazing animals for meat, hide, wool, and milk. 3. Harvesting timber for wood, fiber, and fuel. 4. Marine and freshwater fishing. 5. Accommodating infrastructure for housing, transportation, industrial production, and hydroelectric power. And 6. Burning fossil fuel. Are there any other ecological stressors that you would include as a major cause of degradation? When considering a restoration project, we need to understand why the current site is degraded. We also need to predict future causes of degradation. Research focused on the impacts of exotic plant species in urban forests has concluded that exotic removal was not worth the effort unless that removal was followed by planting of native species. The ongoing stressor here was a lack of native species recruitment and an abundance of exotic species invasions. Ecosystem services or function are often a primary concern in restoration projects. For example, riparian wetlands are built to capture and filter stormwater runoff. Ecosystem services has also become a buzz phrase for what an ecosystem can do for us and the monetary value of ecosystems. Yet it turns out to be quite difficult to measure the function or services of an ecosystem. As we move through the semester, you will see these terms surface as primary goals of many restoration projects. We manage natural resources in large part because we recognize the ecosystem services provided. For example, Cork, Shelton, Binning, and Parry, 2001, offer examples of ecosystem services such as provisions of clean air and water, maintenance of soil fertility, maintenance of livable climates, pollination of crops and other vegetation, control of potential pests, provision of genetic resources, production of food and fiber, and provision of cultural, spiritual, and intellectual experiences, among others. One of the earlier definitions of ecosystem services comes from Daly, 1997, who describes them as, quote, the conditions and processes through which natural ecosystems and the species that make them up sustain and fulfill human life. Because humans benefit from these services, we recognize the benefits in maintaining and supporting natural systems. To read more on ecosystem services, be sure to review the 2005 Millennium Ecosystem Assessment Report that explains categories of ecosystem services, including provisioning services, regulating services, cultural services, and supporting services. The MEA 2005 ties in these ecosystem services with human well-being, a critical consideration in environmental management. The discussion this week will examine these ecological functions and begin to move us towards evaluating restoration plans. Meanwhile, your essay on the definitions of restoration should result in a thorough grounding in the potential and challenges for restoration. The following references were consulted in developing this video lecture.